Welcome back to the Front Three, the show where I recap three games, stories, stars, and stooges from the recent Premier League game week. This week, I'm adding in two new segments where I choose my three best strikes and saves of the week. So buckle in and let's go. A week after their devastating North London derby loss, Tottenham geared up to take out their frustration on Brentford. Asleep at the wheel though, they went down in the first minute of the game, losing possession then losing Bryan Mbeumo in the box for a great volleyed finish. They got back into it quickly with a Brentford giveaway that resulted in Dominic Solanke's first Spurs goal on a rebound, an important moment for their big summer transfer. But despite winning comfortably 3-1, Spurs frustrated me again, especially with their decision-making in crucial moments. Watching all of the dangerous chances where they dribbled towards or into the box, with seemingly no passing or shooting options, was so frustrating. Son rounded Flecken and didn't get a shot off, and the likes of Udogie and Kulusevski ended up with tame shots after exhausting their options. James Maddison was also culpable for a lot of random whipped balls into the box, seemingly with little intentionality. Spurs also left space in behind, especially on the right wing where Mbeumo had some decent chances to break, and Keane Lewis-Potter looked good with the ball at his feet on the left. Despite my complaints though, Spurs were pretty dominant throughout, and they had enough chances that they eventually made some of the right decisions in crucial moments. Brennan Johnson and James Maddison's finishes were both examples of this cutting edge that they often lack, with Heung-min Son feeding through well-timed simple passes and the two goal scorers taking their chances with real confidence. I was glad to see Brennan Johnson get his second in 2 games, and especially the conviction with which he set up and took his strike. He did miss 2 good chances during the game, but I love to see him demanding the ball in space and not hesitating to shoot. I can still see them having trouble with deep banks going forward though. I was also a little concerned by Mickey van de Ven's recklessness, and luckily his first half yellow card for a poor tackle high up the pitch on Christopher Ajer didn't come back to bite him. For Brentford, they had a decent game plan to hold Spurs to half chances, but were their own undoing with a couple of bad giveaways. It was also interesting to see Mikel Damsgaard and Fabio Carvalho start in midfield to match Maddison and Kulusevski. If I'm a fan of either side, I wouldn't be too concerned about anything I saw. Wow, I was already writing my narrative for the game believing that Ipswich had no way back. So let's talk about how this one ended up 1-1. Southampton started with some very nervy moments, giving Ipswich a few great chances to open the scoring. But they settled in with an early goal when Adam Lallana played an inch-perfect entry pass to Tyler Dibling, who looked exciting all game. The next 45 minutes or so was end-to-end, with chances falling to Cameron Archer, Sammy Smodics, and Leif Davis. But nobody was able to grab the game's second goal, and as the clock ticks on, I was pretty confident that Southampton would run away winners. The last half hour was played at a much slower pace, and even though Ipswich had a few half chances that could have been goals, at no point did I think they would score. But then a rebound popped out of the box for Sam Morsey to rifle home for the equalizer, which required a huge deflection to beat Aaron Ramsdale. That goal undid all the great work Southampton managed for 94 minutes, and was a real gut punch for the struggling Saints in the relegation battle. Southampton did have some exciting young players on display in Fernandez, Dibling, Sugawara, and Ugochukwu, while Ipswich rolled out a similar lineup once again. I'd like to see Jack Clark pick up some more minutes for the Tractor Boys, who could use a spark from somewhere as they can't seem to get 3 points, even in games where they play well. The weekend's big game was obviously the title bout between Arsenal and Manchester City, and the two sides offered everything we could have wanted from the very first minute. Haaland's vintage finish, Calafiori's amazing strike, and Gabriel's headed goal were just the highlights of an intense and fun first half. Unfortunately, the quality of the first half was overshadowed by Leandro Trossard's second yellow in stoppage time, the second time this season an Arsenal player has been sent off in a similarly controversial fashion. I'll give more of my thoughts on the decision later in the video, but for now let's stick to the football. The second half was then a standard 11-on-10, with Arsenal sitting back in a 6-3 formation and letting the citizens keep possession. I think everyone would have guessed that City would have been favourites to put a few past Arsenal in 45 minutes of the man advantage, but they created next to nothing. As the commentators pointed out, City refused to use wide areas, and by staying narrow they played into Arsenal's hands. Kovacic, Diaz, Akanji, and Gvardiol essentially passed the ball between themselves outside of the box, getting off a few long-range efforts but barely getting Foden, Haaland, Bernardo, Savinho, or Grealish involved. But it seemed like Arsenal was predestined to lose their lead, and City's best moment of the half came through Jack Grealish, who took on his man and won a corner. Taking it quickly, he again was able to change the point of attack and play a more dangerous ball into the box, which was ultimately turned in by John Stones. It felt incredibly harsh on Arsenal, but that's what City can do to anybody. In the grand scheme of the title race, a draw isn't the end of the world for the Gunners, but they'll be the more disappointed of the two sides that they couldn't muster up enough to get all 3 points. Not just because of the perceived injustice of the red card in the last-minute equalizer, but because they failed to capitalize on City missing KDB and Rodri being forced off early. Now let's move on to the stories. I've been calling for Michail Antonio to finally relinquish his starting spot at the top of West Ham's attack, but Lopetegui made the call to replace him for the first time this season against Chelsea. Interestingly though, it was Jared Bowen, not Nicholas Füllkrug or Danny Ings, who lined up as the 9 on Sunday. Bowen deputized up top plenty for West Ham last year, but he didn't offer much as the focal point against Chelsea. I'm curious to see who continues to start as the lone striker for West Ham going forward, because they've struggled to start the year despite their huge summer transfer window. If there's anything we learned this game week, it's that you can overreact to anything in the Premier League. I was confident that Southampton and Arsenal had their respective games wrapped up, only to concede stoppage time equalizers. The internet was questioning Liverpool after their loss to Nottingham Forest, only for them to beat Bournemouth comfortably and get back to winning ways. Everton managed to hang on to earn a point after taking a lead in the third consecutive game, albeit barely. Newcastle finally lost their magic touch against Fulham. Manchester United just couldn't score after netting 10 this week against Southampton and Barnsley. Tottenham scored 3 after questions about the potency of their attack. Therein lies the beauty of football. You've heard the age-old saying that 2-0 is the most dangerous lead, but what about the psychology of scoring an early goal? This week we had Wolves, Brentford, Man City, Nottingham Forest, Everton, and Southampton all go ahead in the first 25 minutes of play, and none of those teams came away with all 3 points. We've seen the same phenomenon in previous weeks and seasons too. I think it's because scoring an early goal, especially in a game that you aren't outright favorites in, changes your tactics in a fundamental way. Sometimes this shift can actually benefit your opponents because they have the freedom to keep possession and take chances that they wouldn't normally in a 0-0 game. Fulham and Chelsea also scored early and ended up winning comfortably though, so this isn't a hypothesis without opposition. But I think there's something to the idea that scoring too early can take a mental toll on your team. Moving on to the new segments, let's start with my favorite strikes of the week. Raul Jimenez produced one of my favorite strikers' goals to kick off Fulham's great win over Newcastle. On an entry pass into the box, he held off his defender with his back to goal, managing to twist and turn and nestle the ball into the bottom corner. It's so easy to mess up this technique, but Jimenez did it perfectly, securing his second goal of the season in what could be a potential renaissance under Marco Silva. Darwin Núñez always seems to produce a moment of magic to offset his moments of clumsiness. This week it was a whipped left-footed finish that rocketed into the far post past Kepa and looked completely unsavable. The Uruguayan hasn't been central to Arne Slot's plan so far this season, but maybe his first goal will get him some more minutes leading the line for the Reds. And finally, Bryan Mbeumo's early volley against Tottenham is my strike of the week. Although it ended up being a consolation, the way he shaped his body and managed to get such a true strike off was truly sensational. I can't believe the reaction to it wasn't more appreciative of the beauty of the finish, but with Mbeumo's quality, he could easily score another to rival this one later in the season. We also had some great saves this weekend, including Matt Sells on Danny Welbeck. Sells looked a bit suspect all day, especially getting beaten by a free kick into the bottom corner, but he made a crazy kick save on Danny Welbeck after the striker wiggled his way through on goal. It was tough to leave off Nick Pope for his amazing reflex save on Alex Iwobi, but I felt that Welbeck's finish was further from Sells' body and required a tougher save. Sells is the only keeper to make a save of this caliber on a breakaway chance this week. Dean Henderson was immense against Manchester United, looking like the keeper many thought he could become when he played for the Red Devils. He grabbed my second best save of the week for back-to-back saves against Garnacho and De Ligt, both of which were excellent. The first was a sprawling effort to redirect Garnacho's curled effort wide, and the second was a tough save off a header from close range. Henderson follows up last week's Star of the Week performance with a save of the week. You don't get much better than what Andre Onana produced against Crystal Palace. Eddie Nketiah's low effort became a rebound that Ismaila Sarr pounced on, but Onana was able to spring up from the ground and meet Sarr's redirected effort. 99% of the time against any keeper, I think Sarr scores, which is a testament to just how good Onana's save was. The Cameroonian has been very good to start the season, ingratiating himself among United fans after a tough start to life in Manchester. My third star of the week is Iliman Ndiaye. Everton's glimmer of hope this season comes in the form of Ndiaye, who has impressed me since stepping into the side a few games ago. Sean Dyche seems to have given him a bit of positional freedom, as he started centrally but often floated out to the left in search of dangerous areas. The way he glided past Leicester defenders all game was effortless, and his goal came from a combination of great dribbling, combination play, and good running. Then, his touch and finish were perfect, highlighting that he's playing with real confidence and composure. Although Ndiaye is certainly a technical player, he's not overly selfish or lazy. He's hardworking, active, and versatile, and he won possession and led breaks a few times throughout the game. I was nervous for Aston Villa's midfield coming into the year, since the loss of Douglas Luiz left them in my mind without a real metronome. Tielemans has stepped up though, shaking off 2 seasons of lower quality play to become a mainstay in the Villa side. Paired with the physical Amadou Onana, Tielemans impressed me with his quick decision making, bursts of pace on the ball, and range of passing in Villa's comeback win against Wolves. His cross in for the eventual game-winning goal was immaculate. But my first star of the week is Nicholas Jackson. The Senegalese striker has been the subject of his fair share of criticism, but not much bad can be said about his performance this week. He was directly responsible for all 3 goals, firing home 2 excellent finishes and making an intelligent pass to set up his running mate Cole Palmer. Jackson was pretty much flawless between his link-up play, finishing, passing, and most notably his purposeful running. I've tried to give Jackson the benefit of the doubt with his finishing as he's adapted to the league, but I was certainly more critical of his headless running last season. This year, though, he's run the channels with real purpose, and he seems to better understand how he needs to vacate and occupy spaces at different points in the game. When Chelsea brought Jackson off, the team was much less fluid. Now for the unfortunate part of the week, my 3 stooges. I've been glad to see Kepa get starting minutes with Bournemouth, and he's actually looked pretty good to start the season. But against Liverpool, he inexplicably came out in a long ball to Luis Diaz, allowing the red-hot Colombian to round him easily and kick off the scoring. He ended up conceding 2 more, looking a little easy to beat as Liverpool ran out comfortable winners. Hopefully he can get back on track next week. What an absolute travesty. Michael Oliver completely lost control of the biggest game of the season so far. Arsenal's first goal should have been called back because the free kick was taken about 10 yards further forward than when the foul was committed, and then Leandro Trossard was sent off for 2 questionable yellow cards, completely turning the momentum of the game and ruining the second half. From that point, Arsenal turned to the dark arts, wasting tons of time and leading to a number of altercations, which were refereed very inconsistently. For Oliver, it was a game that will be scrutinized for months to come. But my first stooge of the week is Dinos Mavropanos. Mavropanos has quietly kept his place in the West Ham team this season, but if I were Lopetegui, I would be asking myself whether he should remain there. For Chelsea's first goal, he's slow to track back on the quick free kick, letting Jackson take the ball all the way from the left wing to bear down on goal and finish underneath Areola. For Jackson's second, Mavropanos was too eager to step into midfield and win possession, letting Chelsea play in behind him for an easy chance. Alvarez also had a role to play in letting Jackson get loose, but Mavropanos and his undisciplined play put the game out of reach before West Ham even had a chance. That's all for this week. Leave a comment with your favorite stories of the game week, subscribe, and peace.